Well, welcome to Chapter 9, Patient Assessment. And patient assessment is going to be a skill that we're going to utilize pretty much on almost every patient encounter. And this skill that we are going to kind of home in and perfect is going to be a skill that's going to enable us to know when best to apply all the advanced things that we'll be learning in this course. So let's sit back and let's watch this quick introductory video on patient assessment.
The first step in basic life support is patient assessment. This process helps the rescuer make appropriate decisions about patient care. A patient assessment is performed on every call, and many of the assessments are often repeated on the same patient during treatment. Always use appropriate body substance isolation precautions prior to beginning patient care.
Okay, so the 5 main components of patient care are patient assessments going to include the scene size up, the primary assessment, history taking, secondary assessment, and reassessment. For those of us that took EMT a while back ago, these terms may seem a little different, but they're still all the same. The scene size up the same, and instead of primary survey or initial assessment, it's now primary assessment, and so on. So, all right, so rarely does a sign or symptom or one sign or symptom reveal the true status of a patient. We need a multitude or look at several things concerning the patient. But let's look at what a symptom is. A symptom is something that's subjective, or it's something that the patient feels. It's something that you can't really see. It's something that we have to rely on the patient to tell us. Whereas a sign is something that's objective, which is something that we can see. For instance, like diaphoresis, or cyanosis, or a cough, or vomiting, or a rash. So the scene size up, this is the first step of our patient assessment, and this is where we are going to gather information about the situation. And this typically begins by the book at the very beginning when you get the call. Whenever dispatch gives you information on the location, the patient's chief complaint, and maybe some history behind that. And once you get on the scene, we're going to look at the scene for clues that can give us an idea of what's going on with this patient. Now, let's watch another quick introductory video here regarding scene safety and a little bit of the scene size up.
Ensure the scene is safe. Don't put yourself at risk by entering scenes that are dangerous or have not been stabilized. Assess the patient's mechanism of injury or the nature of the illness. Quickly assess the scene to determine if other patients are present. Request additional resources if the number of patients exceeds the capabilities of the initial responding unit. This could include more ambulances, fire departments, heavy rescue, or hazmat response. Determine whether the patient may have injuries to the spine in association with the chief complaint. If you suspect spinal injury, apply appropriate stabilization procedures.
Okay. So, just remember that the pre-hospital setting, this is not a controlled or isolated scene. It's not like in the hospital where there's controls in place to help keep the staff safe and secure. We are in a situation where we are in unpredictable areas, like someone's own living room. We've never been in their living room. We don't know if there's a gun under the sofa or under their pillow, or if there's a dog in the next room that's going to attack us. It can be dangerous based on just walking into the house through their porch, because sometimes steps are not secured and you can end up slipping and hurting yourself. And sometimes scenes can be very unforgiving, because sometimes if you are not very keen to what's going on, and you do not keep scene safety at the tip or the forefront of what's going on, then what can happen is you can get into a situation, and by the time you know or you realize you're in a dangerous situation, you may not be able to resolve that situation to make it safe, and it may end up causing you or someone else to become injured. So the hierarchy here is, first, you need to ensure your safety. You need to make sure that the scene is safe for yourself and your partner next, and then the patient, and then the public, okay? So you want to do things to make sure that you make the scene safe for yourself, your partner, and the patient. That may mean something as simple as wearing your proper protective equipment, or wearing a vest that is going to be reflective, that's going to warn other people that you're there. There's some hazards that you want to keep in mind, some chemical or biologic. This doesn't mean that it's a terrorist attack or anything like that. Chemical can be, you just show up and there could be a car accident, there could be gasoline, or there could be antifreeze on the ground and you slip and fall and hurt yourself. Or it could be an organophosphate poisoning or something like that. Or biologic could be something as simple as the flu. Maybe you haven't had a flu shot this year, and now you catch the flu or pneumonia or your hepatitis vaccine or so on. Electricity from down lines or lighting, water hazards, fires, explosions, or any type of potentially toxic environment. All these things can pose hazards to you, your partner, and your patient. So to ensure your safety, you want to make sure you consider traffic safety issues on your motor vehicle or any roadside hazards. Anytime you're on the roadside, you want to make sure that you wear your protective vest. Consider environmental conditions. For example, heat, cold, rain, wind, lightning, or even, let's just say, animals or bees. If you're allergic to bees, or here in the South we have fire ants. You want to make sure you keep those things in mind. Protect bystanders from becoming patients, because the last thing you need is more patients. When you show up on scene, you have one patient, that's all you need. You don't want to turn around and then now you have 12 patients because you have people trying to see what's going on, and then they get hit by cars. Okay, occasionally some of you may not be able to enter a scene due to the fact that it's not safe. And if you're able to make it safe, then you should. For instance, an example is a dog. If you show up on scene and the patients or the residents has a dog that may be threatening, it's not safe. So ask them to put the dog up. Well, that just made the scene safe and you can enter. But if there's a hostile situation like a fight or an altercation, then you don't want to enter that scene. You want to make sure you request law enforcement or someone else that is responsible for making that scene safe. If it's a rescue situation and you're not trained to do that rescue, you want to make sure you notify the proper authorities of the people who are trained to get in there to make that scene safe and do that rescue. The next thing we want to do is determine the mechanism of injury or the nature of illness. The mechanism of injury, typically trauma, nature of illness, is going to be medical, but sometimes you could have both. So just remember, for your trauma patients, we're going to use the MOI. And whenever we're looking at mechanism of injury, we're wanting to look at what mechanism was involved and where was it applied. Because if it's applied to the head, well, then we've got the brain and spinal cord there. And those are some fragile areas that could sustain a lot more injury than if it was, your foot or something. So you can use the mechanism of injury as a guide, and you want to use it as a guide to predict potential for serious injury. So if you have a major mechanism of injury, for instance, a vehicle that was traveling 50, 60 miles an hour and did not even slow down and hit another vehicle head on, well, then you've got significant mechanism of injury there, and that amount of force that was involved in that accident may have the potential for serious injury to the occupants of those vehicles. So we want to evaluate these factors, like the amount of force applied to the body, the length of time the force was applied, and the areas of the body that were involved. Blunt trauma, blunt trauma, for one thing, it's typically like something that occurs over a broad area, like let's say a baseball bat to the chest. And once that happens, you can have someone that's hit to the chest, and all the organs and systems underneath there are going to be affected. For instance, if I was hit in the chest with a baseball bat, I may have injury to the ribs or the musculature of my chest. I could also have injury to my lungs, or actually I could even have some cardiac damage to it or vessel damage. A lot of times the skin's not broken, so it makes it difficult to see what's going on there. However, the organs below are typically injured. Then we have penetrating trauma. Penetrating trauma typically occurs at a small point of contact between the skin and the object. For instance, like a knife wound or stabbing. Or you could also have a gunshot wound too as a penetrating injury. There's the open wounds have a lot of potential there for infection, because whatever was on the blade is going to go into the body and is introduced inside the body. Also, like a gunshot, the cavitation can actually can suck germs and stuff into the body there. The severity of the injury depends on the characteristics of the penetrating object. If it's a high caliber, of course, it could be more. Or if it's a long knife, could be worse. But, it depends on where at in the body, what part of the body is affected. So motor vehicle crashes, is the amount of force is usually subjected to the speed of the vehicle. And wherever the patient is sitting typically has something to do with the potential for injury. For instance, the driver typically is at more risk than the passenger in the back. Typically, the safest place in the vehicle is the back seat in the middle. So we want to really keep in mind these things. Look at some clues. The steering wheel. Is the steering wheel damaged? Is the windshield spider-webbed or damaged? Is the side window damaged? Is there intrusion into the vehicle? Was the patient restrained or unrestrained? All these things can kind of give you clues to the amount of force or the potential for injury there. Falls, the force is going to be related to the distance that they fell, what they landed on, the body that landed first. All this has a lot to do with the mechanism or the forces that it has applied to the patient, or the potential for injury there. With falls over 3 times the patient's height, you have significant risk there for multiple system injury. So that's a serious fall if it's 3 times. 2 times the patient height for children is serious. So we want to make sure that we understand that 3 times the height doesn't seem like a lot, but if you really look at it, that could be 21 feet for some person. That's a pretty good fall, so keep that in mind. Gunshot and stab wounds, sometimes they're difficult to assess, and sometimes they're difficult to find. You may not even notice it until you really get them exposed all the way, get all their clothes off. Gunshot wounds can be a high velocity injury depending on the type of weapon involved. And stab injuries exert little force but can be lethal depending on how long the knife is and how many times they were stabbed there too. So sometimes we can only estimate the extent of the injury here. For medical patients, determine the nature of illness. This is often best described by the chief's complaint. Try to get a history. How many people has other people in the house been ill or feeling the same way? How long have they been ill? Sometimes you may have a situation where you have both the nature of illness and mechanism of injury could both come into play, like a diabetic patient who became hypoglycemic and ran off the road and had an accident. You may have to do both, but typically with the nature of illness, you're going to get this by talking to the patient, getting history, finding out what's going on, and figuring out what the nature is here. And you may need to use your senses to check for clues. For instance, you may have to touch the patient, and if they're hot, that could be a sign of an infection because they have a fever, and so on. Sometimes smell. If you walk in the room and you most of us have smelled that GI bleed smell or that GI smell or vomit, then that's kind of a clue that we've got some, GI problems going on. Well, that concludes this section, and we'll be getting into section 2 next, and hopefully this is helpful.